When you have your girls, you're never alone. You get together for coffee, maybe to work out, or just to laugh. We created Hey Girl, just for you. Can't wait for you to join us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Hey Girl. I'm your girl Kim with an E, and this is episode 61. Now, if you're joining us for the first time, I'm here to let you know that Hey Girl is a safe space where you can share your experiences and be affirmed. Let's face it, life can be complex and sometimes overwhelming. That's why we believe in the power of conversation, because knowing you're not alone is what helps us get through. So I'm wondering how everyone is this week. How has the week been? Are you feeling alone or lonely? Well, come on in the room and be sure to hit like and share with your friends because this is the place to be. We have a great show in store for you and welcome. Tell me you're here. Say hello in the comments. I see some of you out there and I need you to say hello and tell me that you are here. So, you know that this month is Black Music Month. So, we are talking all about music, which is my favorite subject, one of my favorite subjects, I guess I should say. I love music. So, I'm thrilled to be talking about Black music this month, celebrating Black artists and the history of the music in the Black community in particular. So I have a question for all of you out there. I need you to first say hello in the comments and tell me you're here, where are you visiting from? But I want to know, who is your favorite Black musical artist? Put that person's name in the comments. If you're like me, you probably have more than one favorite. That's all good too. There's so many genres of Black music. So maybe it's gospel, maybe it's jazz, um, R&B, hip hop. Just tell me who your favorite artist is. Lately, I've been listening to a whole lot of Black gospel. So my favorites are Jonathan McReynolds and Fred Hammond and Kirk Franklin. How many of you can testify that those men are blessed and they are a blessing? I know that their music has been for me for sure. So, guys, also don't forget to check out the Hey Girl store. As you know, we have some revived products, some of the same stuff we've shown you before, but there's also some new stuff in the store that you can check out. Putting the link in the chat so you can get to it quick and check out what we have there, the cute mugs and fanny packs, and then a couple of new things that I've added. So go check it out. Do I have anybody joining me today? It seems awfully quiet in the chat. Am I talking to myself? Hey, Marissa, good to see you. Glad that you are here. Who's your favorite Black musician? Tell me in the comments who you love to listen to. Don't get me started on secular music because I got this whole old school thing happening. Well, here's the thing. It's old school to you young people, but I'm discovering that it's now considered old school, but it was very current for me. I'm talking about Luther and Anita Baker. Can I get a witness? Amen. Hallelujah. But yeah, now I'm showing my age. So let me just, I like Bruno Mars because he's got that kind of soulful retro feel. So yeah, I guess I can kind of have the best of both worlds in that regard. Anyway, last week, you may remember that Audrey and I talked about some of the history. We started off with some of the history of this month and how it came to be a thing. I didn't even know it was a thing. Audrey was the one that helped me to know this was actually designated as Black Music Month by Jimmy Carter. And we talked about the importance of Black music to Black people's experience in this country in particular, right? And the struggle that they had to have the freedom to be in control of their own creative work as it, of course, began. Their music began in slavery, right? They were singing in the fields, sometimes for as a way to send messages to other slaves as they were trying to escape to the North. But I would imagine also music for us as a people has been very much about healing and therapy. I just believe that to be true. Our music is so soulful. We talked about that last week too. So I don't know about you, but is music, particularly Black music, something that is therapeutic for you? That's something that you have found to be healing? Um, I think the music has certainly the power to heal. And as we talked about last week, Black music in particular has come from a hard place. And I think that's what has been probably what has made Black music in particular, given its unique characteristic. Now, I know that my internet is slow, so I may be missing you if you're out there and I haven't responded to something you've said. It's because I'm a little behind. But tell me if music for you is therapy. There is a thing called music therapy, but sometimes if I'm going through something hard, playing the right song or hearing the right song on the radio can really make a difference. So recently, we also talked about, I'm recapping some of the things we talked about last week. Aside from the healing aspect of music and Black music in particular, we also were talking about, you may remember, the incredible creativity that Black people demonstrate. And I think that what is really unique is that we have had such hardships. We as a community had such difficulty and hard times and often don't have access to resources and ways to be creative and to express our creative selves. But I think out of that lack has come such ingenuity that we cannot deny the creative just genius sometimes that that our musicians have demonstrated. Last week we showed you that clip of Rosetta Thorpe jamming on the guitar, y'all. Jam. If you didn't see that, go back to the last week's episode and click that link in the chat. She's getting down, okay? Sister was doing it. But we were recently in Las Vegas, my family and I, for a wedding. And we were just walking the strip. And I was just mesmerized by this one guy who was on the street in Las Vegas with like a paint bucket and some tin and was straight up killing it. So, Amanda, I'm going to have you run that clip real quick. Check out this dude in Las Vegas last week. I mean, really, isn't that? I loved it. Like I stopped and I recorded him for like a couple of minutes, and as you saw, the women on the street were jamming. They started getting into it. It turned into like a party in that little brief moment. But I just felt like it's such a demonstration of what can be done with so little, and I feel like it's just such a representation of Black music in general. We have done a lot with a little and made it into something that's pretty amazing, right? So that's what this episode is all about. This is what this month is all about, as we talk about music and Black music in particular. And I am excited to have a guest to introduce to you. Maybe some of you know her already. Her name is Sharona Drake, and she is an author, creative, and self-proclaimed urban missionary. As an artist, Sharona has recorded and toured internationally with #1 Billboard artist Charles Jenkins. As an author and mentor, she has helped sexual trauma victims become victors. And as an urban missionary, she has served in some of the most dangerous areas in the world. Overall, Sharona has the unique ability to inspire others, and we're so glad that she is here to inspire us today. Welcome to Hey Girl, Sharona Drake.
Hey.
Hey,
Hey.
hey, hey. Thank you for having me. I'm very
Oh.
excited about wherever this conversation is going to go.
You keep saying that like you're expecting it to go
I
somewhere.
mean, I can't predict myself. So I'm like, oh, I just went there. So yeah.
Oh well, I'm so glad that you're here and excited to get to know you. We have just met. We have the mutual friend in Audrey.
Yeah.
She brought us together, but she talks you up. So we're just anxious to know about you. I already know that you do a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
we read the bio, so
Yeah.
you get it, everybody. She does a lot. So it's kind of like, well, where should we begin?
Right.
Um, so I guess the question that I have first is, well, let's start with the most important thing. You're a new mom.
I am. I
How's
have
it going?
the I have everything I prayed for in a child. And
Aw.
I'm also seeing the weight of everything I prayed for. I wanted a child with a very strong will. I wanted a child that was bold and courageous and did not just. I wanted a child that questioned the norm or the authority. I wanted that. I wanted someone that was going to be a trailblazer. So my child couldn't just take everything at face value and just trust whatever you say the first time. He's 16 months
Oh,
old and he's absolutely that. He
I was
tries
gonna say
me. He is an amazing communicator. I talk to him like I'm talking to you. And
that is
sometimes he acts like he ignores me, and people are like, he doesn't understand you. I'm like, yes, he does. And if I
uh,
talk to him a little more stern, he'll respond accordingly.
oh my
So yeah,
goodness.
he just ignores me sometimes because he doesn't feel like doing whatever I'm asking him to do. But yeah, so it's been amazing. It's been I mentored for years. My first job was with an after school care program, and my mom worked in a daycare growing up with the church. So a lot of my growing up, we always had kids around. But when I went to Chicago, I started my nonprofit organization working with young women. And so I do feel like they saved my son from some things. They helped me to, you know, people talk about the first pancake. Oh, it's the first pancake. You're just trying to figure it out and you make all the mistakes. I feel like some of those girls got the hits that my son
Uh,
CJ probably would have gotten.
able to
Parenting
work
test, yeah, it tests
work
your ego. It tests your
Oh
ego. And I think especially as we're talking about celebrating black music, but just kind of black culture,
yeah.
wrestling with, I grew up in the South and this idea that children are to be seen, not heard, or, speak when you're spoken to. And there's the child's table and, all of these things that really are very much a duplication of how the slave masters taught us and treated
That's
us.
so interesting. And I
Yeah.
saw that video that you posted with your baby in the sand. So cute. And
Oh,
with your voiceover talking about, my child will not be raised that way. And I was like, wow, that's a word. I mean, it's so true. I mean, even spankings, right? My
yeah,
my sister and I have had this whole conversation about whether we should spank our children. And she was like, it comes from the master and slave, and they used to
yeah,
beat us, and now we beat our kids. And yeah, you don't think about it that
yeah,
way. I mean, our culture is has been so enculturated by that history.
yeah,
We don't
yeah,
even recognize that
yeah,
connection, the things that we do with our own children. So,
right.
I mean, so you're a brave woman to say, I'm going to let my child question me.
Yeah, yeah, I feel it now because he does it
uh,
now, and I'm like, okay, I said no, but you're about to do that. The consequence is still going to be the same,
yeah.
but I understand that you want to try this out, and I'll be right there
Mm,
reminding you that I said no the last time when I popped that little hand. Because at this
yeah.
age, we can't reason, but when he gets a little older,
Right.
then we can
So
reason together.
that's exactly what my sister and I argued about. This. When I say argued, we argued about this. And she's like, I will not put my hands on my child. I was like, when they're under two
Yeah.
and they don't understand the words that are coming from your mouth, they will understand that pop on the hand.
Yes.
And you may not have the time to try to reason it out as they
Yeah.
about to touch the fire. You know what I mean?
Right. It's
So
that
there's
balance
a
of
way. Hmm.
because I want to make sure that when something is dangerous, he
Yeah.
knows when to listen. So I might say, "Hey, don't do that. Don't do that," a couple of times. But if I say, "Don't do that," my son knows, okay, I don't want what follows that tone.
He's been trained to know the tone of voice goes up and then comes.
Oh yeah, that's when you see him do everything I just asked him to do in the last 5 minutes, and people are like, "What just happened?" I spoke to him like a black mama.
Indeed.
So yeah, it's going great.
Well, good. He's a cutie pie. He definitely
Thank
is.
you.
I remember when my babies were little like that. So love them up because it's gonna be done in 5 minutes. I promise.
I bet. Yeah.
It will. Trust me. Okay, so you got a lot going on. You're an author, an artist, a mentor. You've been a mentor, and now boxer.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? So, here's it. I have certain philosophies of life. Now so I own my own company. I'm actually brand strategist full time. So I've owned a company for the past 10 years, been full time with it for the past 3 or 4. And one of the things I like to do with my clients that I also do with myself is just narrowing down, your 2 main values for life. Because I heard from Farnsworth Bentley at a workshop I've taken this with me. He said, your brand is what you say no to. And the problem is most people don't know where they don't have a line for their no. They don't know what they stand for, and I think that's when the greats have been made, when we've said no to social injustice, when we've said, no, I'm not moving from the front of this seat to the back, or no, I'm not going to perform at your club if you don't allow Black people to attend, be in your club, whatever it is. That's when those hard lines are made. So I do things to challenge myself because my 2 values are risk-taking or adventure, however you want to look at it, and freedom. Those are my core values. This is partly why I can't get so upset with my son, right? But his dad is completely different. He's like a rural guy. But I am, with boxing, yep, I had my first amateur bout August 27th. And I wanted something that was going to challenge me in a different way. One that was going to be incredibly risky, right? Yeah. I played sports. I played football, intramural football in college. I've played basketball growing up. I've done those things. But when you're playing a team sport, or if you figure out the cheat code, you kind of just do it. So I was really good at football, but I didn't really have to practice. It was something natural I had. Basketball wasn't as good. I just like playing, but I didn't really care as much. And then anytime I would do runs or whatever, I barely conditioned my body. Boxing, you can't cheat. And I wanted to see what I was truly made of, and learn about the science, because it really is a sweet science. So I've been challenged in ways that I cannot explain. It's been such a spiritual process and humbling.
Really? Now, how many of you out there would associate boxing with spirituality? How has it been a spiritual process?
Because, when we think of martial arts, a lot of those in the Asian, cultures, and when they do, the spirituality has always been tied into it.
Okay.
It's always this element of meditation or centering or understanding. And so, boxing, although many people look at it as brutal, it's really more about you than the opponent. And so in our ancient people, our tribes and everything, we always had warriors. And we always had tribal fights that were accompanied with music, and you had drums, and, it was an event, whether it's Native or African or whatever, it's an event to get the warriors together, really to work out all of these things in you. And we don't do that anymore. And we don't see it the same way. But, for instance, I run at things. I'm a jump and watch God give you wings. I always say that. And there is a benefit to that. Right? Because if everybody else is scared, I will get on water. Like I always say, if Peter would have died right there, he still would have had the most amazing story. His obituary would have been like, man, he died after walking on water. So y'all dying in the bed. He died walking on water. He took a couple of steps, got a little scared and sunk, but he walked on water. Like that's my perspective on life, right? Going into boxing, I found that I just run into things really quickly. And that's how I do with life. Like, hey, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go all in very quickly, go hard. And I take hits that aren't always necessary. And so I remember my coach saying, hey, you didn't have to take those hits. You just be like, okay, I don't know what's going on, so let's go. And I'm like, yeah, but it's boxing. I'm going to get hit anyway. Yeah, but you don't have to take all of them.
Hmm.
And I was like, but I'm fine. But you won't be fine if you keep doing that round after round.
Yeah.
So he was like, there's a thing with timing. Yes, you're going to get hit, but you need to control your timing and your pace. And so, to ease into things. And I've seen that in my whole life. So there was one time he asked me, I was on the way to training and I'm like, hey, do you need anything? I'm stopping at the store. He's like, yeah, can you pick up one of these? I'm out. I'm like, okay, I picked up 6 because I'm like, oh, they were inexpensive. I know he always uses them. So I came and gave him the bag and he said, this is what I'm talking about. And I was like, but it's nothing. He said, that's that right there. You have to, some things you pace into, right? And so I've had to learn that about myself. I've had to learn about, preparing for the hit. A lot of times we spend our lives trying to avoid the hits. Like, what can I do to avoid getting hit? As opposed to saying, life's going to throw its punches, right? How can I prepare? And then with every hit that's thrown there, every time an enemy, right, is throwing a punch at you, they're allowing themselves to open up in a different way. If you see it that way, every punch thrown is an opportunity. And so, for me, it's like, oh, okay, as opposed to, man, I'm just getting hit. It's like, oh no, if you're throwing this, then that means you're open over here. Let me move and counter. And so all of that, or down to the fact that he's like, hey, you can't stop moving. If you're getting hit, you still have to throw punches or else you become a punching bag. Everyone has practice on punching bags. So you don't want to do that. So when you're in the middle of getting hit, you keep throwing your hits. You keep going. And eventually that's going to discourage the one hitting you because they don't know what you're doing. You haven't gotten scared. You haven't let up. And, that's life, when you're getting hit, you got to still punch. You got to still do something. You gotta still keep moving because if you stand still, you become life's punching bag. I'm not okay. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, like, are we capturing this? Like, I feel like I should do image quotes. All these good little nuggets. But that's true. I can see the mind game that's at play as much, if not more, than the physical aspect. How did that even come along, though? Like this opportunity to do the amateur boxing? Is that a whole other story?
I was like, I need something that's not going to let me cheat. Because I everything else I figure it out. And I didn't know as much about boxing when I got into it. And after a while I was like, oh man, I chose this. But I do feel like it was God. I feel like the Holy Spirit led me to it so that he could work out things he had been trying to work out for decades. As far as my pace, as far as, my timing, as far as, hey, you don't have to be so tense and stressed. You won't win a fight tense. It'll take the air out of you. You have to learn to relax even as your punches are coming. Like all of those things, right, have been working itself out in my life. And so I just chose boxing. And the way my life works, when I think of something, the opportunities end up opening up. I met someone who was training and we've been together. And then, I had my first event here in Huntsville, August 27th.
And where is it going to be? Is it going to be streamed? Is it a live event you have to attend?
It's a live outdoor event at the Sharona Legacy Center. So it's new here in Huntsville. They just opened it a month or so ago.
Right down the street from my house. We love it there. It's really nice there, the place, the learning center. Awesome. Okay. So we have everybody mark your calendars for August 27th. That should be an amazing show. I'll be praying for you, that's for sure. So clearly we are different in that regard. Everything you just said sounds really good. I agree with you. But I'm glad it's you, not me, because I'm the one, Peter's out on the water. I'm the brother on the boat watching. Yeah. Like, dude, are you serious? Right, yeah, right. I'm not a big risk taker. I'm afraid. I'm careful. But I miss out on things also.
You're John.
So that's
You're John.
A whole other story. Yeah.
And we need John and we need Peter. Too many Peters, everybody.
There you go. It takes all kinds. Thank you for giving me that little nugget. Okay. That little breadcrumb. So this is about music, Black music in particular. So I'm going to ask you the same question I asked everyone else. Who is your favorite Black musician in particular?
Man, I don't really have one. It probably depends on what time of day you ask. Right now, I am saying that, and when I say right now, I mean 2 hours from now, it might be different. But right now, in this moment, I am really thinking about Bob Marley. And not even because I'm a huge fan of his music.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of people using their platforms to create movements for what they believe. And he was willing to do it unto death. And because of that, people all over the world know his name. I mean, they were pepper spraying him on stage and he was still performing, right? Because he believed he had a value that he was like, no, I'm not getting off the stage. I don't care if you pepper spray me. I don't care. There have been very few artists that I feel like have created those types of movements where it was like, you're going to have to kill me to stop this message and this music from going forward. And I think a lot of us, for some reason, our Christian music doesn't scare the enemy like that. I can't think of a gospel artist that has scared the enemy so bad that it's like we have to kill them.
Wow.
We've been safe.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. So today is Bob Marley. Right now it's Bob Marley. I like Fela Kuti. He did the same thing with Afrobeat music in Africa. But I love Ella Fitzgerald. And like you said, Jonathan McReynolds. I love his music. I love the way his mind works. And I've seen it work like in person in Chicago, and he's brilliant. So I have a lot of respect for him. But yeah, when I'm thinking of artists that really changed the world. Yeah, I think there haven't been a lot like Bob Marley.
I feel that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, I mean, you're an artist. You sing. I know you do backup, and do you have an album, or do you just have a couple of songs? Tell me what you've done musically.
Yeah. So I've been singing probably since before I was talking. I was singing songs and just loud like my son is. And so I've done it. I have a couple of singles out. I've done background. I've sang background with a few artists. The one most people know is Charles Jenkins. I recorded with him. We had a song out that we were in London together. We did tours, but we had a song out that was number one just a couple months ago. We recorded years ago, but He'll Make It All Right is still on the radio that I was able to record with him. And of course, Our God Is Awesome and War and all those great stuff. That was fun. I have a album that I curated for Women's Month a couple of years ago. It's called Woman, and I think that's on my website. These are all things I'm remembering as we're talking. But yeah, I just got some women together and was like, hey, let's do kind of this various artists type of project. But for me, I've kind of been, I like to say I write freedom music. But when I've worked with folks in the industry, because I used to be a general manager in the industry, I used to do artist development. I've been on all sides of the music industry, and but no one has been able to nail down my genre. And people always say, yeah, okay, and they play and they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what that is. And I think that's partly because of the same reason why I enjoy artists like Bob Marley. I don't write music for music's sake. I write music to tell a story. But every story has a different scene. Every story has different characters. So I literally see characters. There are certain things that a guitarist might play, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's when Sally walks in the room in my head. So if that's not played, we are missing a character. So, that's how I see it. Like, oh, no, we're on the beach. Oh, no, you can't play that chord because it took us from the beach to here, to a pool. That's not quite it. I'm at that type of artist. And of course I lead praise and worship, which I love. And, we've shown some pictures of that. And, I have tons of energy, and it's probably ridiculous sometimes. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, you got a lot. So do you think you will produce an album at some point, a full album with all of music, just you? Or do you think you'll always just kind of
I have no idea.
A little bit of that. Anything's possible at this point.
That's my life. And it depends on what story is needed. I'm one of those that, I feel like everyone's voice is needed for a time, for a space, and for a reason. And I prefer to use my energy in the right way for whatever season it is. Now, I think some artists are able to produce because that's what they do. They create the season. I feel like I respond to stuff. I give people hope. But I'm more responsive in my music than I think creating different things. So I write music. A lot of music I wrote was when I was out protesting in Chicago and doing, I was just in that. I felt like we needed music for that time. And I love our Black culture. I love our stories. So my favorite shows are to do, deal with our people. That's whether it's Black History Month or not. I'm going to take us through, I just believe in that. So yeah, even last Juneteenth, I did a virtual concert, and it was amazing. It was just kind of the plight of Black music. And we went through everyone from Stevie to Kendrick Lamar to hymns, old hymns. We did, everything.
Yeah.
Jazz, all in it.
So let's take a listen. We do have a little clip of one of your songs, so we're gonna listen to it because you do have a nice voice. So I want people to hear it.
Let's all act like we don't see red splattered on the ground. No silver in a brown body, no white privilege around. Let's pretend that we can't hear and witnesses are mute. There's no proof for what they say, no record of abuse. But that's not true at all. Hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil there. Plug their ears, gag their voices, call it justice, make them feel. Please cover their eyes, color.
That's good. Yes,
Thank you.
girl.
Yeah.
But I definitely see what you're saying about the message and the story. Yeah. I see that really shining through.
Yeah, that one was a song that I wrote after I wrote those lyrics the day I found out the cops for Eric Gardner were not going to be indicted. And I was literally watching the news, and the girl was like, I don't know why we're making this all about race. I don't see race. I don't see color. And I was like, So I wanted to write a song that felt light and just as light as she took it. Like, I'm colorblind. But the lyrics are heavy and dark. And what I saw, the video was almost like Beauty and the Beast, the intro, where she's just kind of waving in the neighborhood. And there are these aristocratic people dressed and they're waltzing. But as they're dancing around bodies in the street. But they're just dancing with their mask on. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Yeah. And, they're blind to the bodies that they're dancing around. But it looks happy. It looks beautiful. The sun is out, but there they are. And that's what I felt like some people's lives are like. They're still dancing, and we're laying on the ground, and y'all are dancing in our blood. So it's one of those stories. So it's very sarcastic.
Yeah. See no evil, hear no evil. Yeah, I feel that. Mercy. So speaking of story, particularly of your story, you have also written a book.
Yeah.
And it clearly is coming out of your own personal story. So tell us about the book. It's called After They Touched Me.
Yeah.
And so speaking of sexual abuse.
Yeah, it's the story of how I've turned my sexual trauma into a glorious triumph, right? And this is another call, like another story. And I wrote this right before the Me Too thing kind of happened. It was just, this was in response, but as it was coming out, this was when all these stories were surfacing. But as a child, I did experience sexual trauma like many of us do, whether we call it that or not, whether it's someone touching you or molesting you or whatever, or it's just being used to going out and having to look and fear or hold your keys around your hand, or don't wear this because this invites them to touch you this way. All of that is traumatizing. All of that can make women and men hate their bodies and hate what they have. All of those things. And so I wrote this book because in my time mentoring young women, there was a few incidences I ended up finding out about later where someone we trusted was molesting the girls and had been. And it was probably one of the darkest times of my life. To see not just that he did it, but then to witness the responses of it, the questions of, well, they do kind of wear this, or they dress like this, or they do look grown, or, I mean, really, he has the mind of a kid still, all of the things. And to hear the church's response, of course, I'm angry, I'm blowing up, and to hear certain things like, well, we got to show God's mercy, and we got to show God's grace, and we got to, and it broke me, and it broke me in so many ways. I was grateful to walk things out with my young women and get them the help that I should have gotten earlier on, but I was doing, as an adult. So I was really grateful for that. But this book was birthed out of that. And it was birthed after a conversation with a guy that didn't even know me. Him and his wife had been watching me, and they were like, I guess they were in a meeting one time, and she was behind me and saw me write a business plan in 20 minutes. And she had told her husband, like, hey, we need to watch her because they have a really big business. They were like, I saw her write a business plan in 20 minutes. While you were talking, she just wrote it. I had an idea. I wrote it out. It's probably still somewhere. And so he came to me. He was like, I feel like you have a book in you. And it's a book. It's supposed to be about something that you've gotten farther than most people, but you haven't just arrived. That's what people need. And so I wrote this book to talk about my process of turning things around, of becoming triumphant after those trials, of becoming a victor after being a victim. Because it's not enough to just say, yeah, me too, or he did that, or she did that. Even after they're caught or they go to jail, now what? Right. Do you stay angry forever? Right. Do you still get nervous every time someone touches you? Do you still respond to your husband or your spouse in a way that is, horrible? Like, can you still not get intimate with them? Do you have certain boundaries? Like, what are the things that you do after that? How do you forgive? How do you move on? And so I wanted to have that conversation. Okay, so me too. Now what?
The title, So the key word in the title is after. Like, what happens after?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And you're right about the cultural response too often to that sort of thing. The church's response too often. I mean, all of that is, man, it's sickening. Actually, quite sickening. And I'm thankful for things like the Me Too movement, which has really, I think, brought this conversation up in a very real and meaningful way. But we have to keep it going, and we have to make sure we're all doing our part in whatever way we can to make sure that we hold society's feet to the fire, that we don't slip back into our old ways. And, because I think that's easy to do. The Me Too movement, when stuff was coming out kind of all at once, and then it kind of dies down and people kind of go back to whatever. I think it's really important to remind us as a society, as a church, as women, that this doesn't go away. And what happens after? Like, there's this whole thing when it happens in the moment. Let's deal with this in the moment, and then we forget about what happens. And that's a lifetime. That's a lifelong struggle.
Absolutely, and so many men deal with it.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of men inbox me and write me and say, thank you for not writing this to women alone. Because I needed this. Or as I was reading your book, thinking of this other person I love, I realized I was a victim, but because I was a guy, when my babysitter did this to me or whatever else, and I told someone, they were like, okay, yeah, you got your stripes.
Right.
And they're like,
isn't that interesting? And you're like, why do I feel so horrible? And you're congratulating me.
Yeah. And so they would stuff it down. And they're like, well, this is why intimacy with my wife is weird. Or I'm always comparing someone to the one that molested me or whatever. And then there are layers to, what do you do when now the cravings in you have been aroused, right? And so you find these weird issues where people who have been traumatized or molested or whatever from other people also getting these weird relationships where they want them, they desire them, and then they don't know where the line is because they were groomed. And so
Yeah.
getting over that shame and guilt. And then when you're just like, well, I'm all the way open, you know, and I'm promiscuous. And I was that one. You have some people that like, don't touch me, don't ever. And I was like on the other end of just like, I was really promiscuous. That's what I've known. You know, that's what I translated as intimacy. And the church didn't have an answer for my root issue. Theirs was surface. You know, God doesn't want you having sex before marriage. God doesn't want this. God doesn't stop. Until I finally had a leader that was like, oh, your issue is not promiscuity. Your issue isn't sex. I don't even think that's it. And he was like, your issue is intimacy. You want intimacy, and there's a part of you that thinks this is the only way that comes. And you
So
don't
in the
have
book,
to offer. Yeah.
what do you offer people who have suffered? Like what give us a hint to some of the insight that you are able to give through your experience.
Yeah, I talk about awareness first. I think I was 19 when I really realized what it was. You know, I never my mom raised me. If anybody does this, let me know. If anybody does this, I didn't process it though the same way that she was telling me. And I think because of that idea, like, no, we're participating together. We're in a relationship. You want this. You did, you know, so it was more like we're sneaking around as opposed to, no, you're taking something from me. And sometimes I had to get to the age of the person to realize, like, hold on, I'm 19 now and I was 9.
Jesus.
You know,
Yeah.
wrong, you know, but I was being told, I know you're mature and this is what happened. So I'm, you know.
So first of all, just knowing
Yeah.
that there was an issue is the first step.
Awareness is huge.
Yeah.
Forgiving yourself and that the process of what that looks like. Processing through, like for me, I was molested by males and females. So processing all of that. I talk about even adultery. The first people that touched me were married people, right? And so my concept of marriage and what's sacred was warped very early. I was a side chick before I was, you know, in the double digits. So I could be hidden easily because I was groomed to be. So you translate that into relationships where you're not honored the way you need to be. You're not respected. It's, oh, let's keep it private. It's all of that plays a role in it. It's nothing for you. You've been messing with married men since you were 5, since you were whatever. So, you know, the church is telling you this, but some of these folks in the church were the ones.
Mercy.
So, you know, so talking about that, like how to view marriage, how to correct my view on adultery, how to deal with, okay, women do this, and how, you know, there was a part of me that felt like I needed to protect women because there was someone close to me that was messing with the girls, but then I also knew girls were doing this. So it was like protecting y'all, but y'all are harming me, and I don't know what to do here, and this is strange. You know, all of that. So awareness, to having community, to learning how to be honest, to dealing with anger with God and with people. To forgiving myself, to, you know, having very practical tips to deal with my own hormones, you know, and to be okay with process. Sometimes God is less concerned with the surface, you know, than the church is. And so the church is saying, stop doing that, stop doing it. He's like, that's not even the issue. Okay.
Right.
I want to get to her heart. I want her to be healed, not to look healed, but to be healed.
Right.
And this is going to start here, and eventually it'll show itself here. But if you start backwards, it's not going to work for her. And that wasn't working for me. So I had to get comfortable with that, with the process. And I talk about that in the book and everything as well.
That's good. I think it's what you're sharing is so powerful and so needed. It's so much more common than probably we even realized in terms of people who have experienced it. And then maybe even if you haven't experienced it for yourself, but you've been a witness to that sort of thing, sometimes there's that guilt that comes with not having intervened. You didn't know what to do, or maybe you were a kid yourself, or so all of that. Yeah, I can definitely relate. So you've done a lot. You have your hands in a lot of things, but I definitely see the thread that runs through everything. I mean, you have a message in everything that you are involved with, and it's all about healing and restoring. And I'm curious to know, and this obviously in the last year, in 2020, there's been a lot of heartache and hurt and turmoil and just everything. You know, I think once we got to 2021, we all kind of breathed a sigh of relief, hoping.
And then the people start climbing up Capitol Hill, and then we
Yeah,
just said,
it's like,
"Oh,
oh
okay."
my gosh, it's working.
The people are
So,
broken.
oh my gosh, yes. So, what would you say if you looked back just in the past year?
Mhm.
One of the biggest lessons is that you have learned in your life, or based on this past year in
Yeah,
particular.
I had so much. Like for me, I had in 2020, I had a baby 2 weeks after I cleared to go. I mean, 2 days after I cleared to go outside. We went on lockdown, so I never went outside.
Oh,
I was on bed rest right before I had the baby, so it was like, oh, okay. I didn't see outside till April. Um, right, and then there's my little man. Y'all saw him, CJ. Okay,
oh, he's so
um,
cute.
but I have this baby. Um, 2020 happens. We have, George Floyd, and these are things I'm passionate about. All that I had a baby and got a divorce in the same year. So on top of just 2020 being 2020, right? All of these things happen. And so I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is it's gonna be okay. It's
Mm,
gonna be okay. I always say, scripture talks about faith being a gift. And the reason why I believe faith is a gift is because faith doesn't help God, it helps us.
mm,
What God said is going to happen has already happened. We just don't see it because we are confined to time. So what
mm-hmm,
we're doing in the interim of stressing out and trying to help God, make it happen
mm,
is not doing anything for us. If we
mm-hmm.
believe, if we have faith, it's going to come anyway. It's just better for us if we're not stressed out on the way of him, stamping his promise with the reality. So I
Mm-hmm.
love to live in this space like it's gonna be okay. What did God say? I used to have a sticky note on the door when I would go out my bedroom. It says, "Remember what God said."
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the biggest thing we have to remember. What did God say? Does this look like what God said? And then
Mm-hmm.
you have some options. Am I in the wrong place? Is that why it looks, different? Or, do I just need to be patient?
Mm-hmm.
Because what God said is already done. I think that's the biggest lesson, to remember what God said and then believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see 2020 being any different than any other year for me, but I do think it was, it just put a stamp on, hey, remember what God says and
Hold on
trust.
to that, right?
Yeah. And he's been good and he's been faithful. And I literally have never seen him fail. So, 2020 was garbage, but there's more garbage to come. But then it was also amazing. My business did better than it ever did in
Mm-hmm.
2020, and it's done better now. Like, so, God makes rivers and deserts. So
Yeah.
none of it matters to me. It's like,
Yeah.
y'all are freaking out. What is God saying? If God's not freaking out, I'm not freaking out.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah, that's a good point. When you're flying on a plane, you don't get worried until the stewardess look like they're nervous.
right, right,
But no matter what's happening, if they're just kind of going along, and maybe it's okay.
right.
But
Absolutely.
yeah, if you know the one who's flying the plane, there's no need to
Yeah.
worry. Um, so tying it back to music, could you identify any way in which music has ministered to you in particular during hard seasons?
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely my go-to when it comes to social justice. I think I probably would have been more like Malcolm in the early years than
Mm,
Martin in the early years, even though they might have switched later on. But I'm a Nina Simone, we about to go out in the streets type of, I probably been one of them shooting with the cops, like
Angela Davis.
Asada Shakur and all, yeah, like, that's me, naturally,
Yeah.
right? Music has been uh the avenue for anger and
Mm,
lament and lamentation, and I don't think we use it for that enough
mm-hmm.
in the gospel world, right? Everything is happy, everything is just going to be all right, and yes, I did say before, God's got it, but the process is also necessary because you become insane, you look insane if everything that happens you just there's no reality.
Mm-hmm.
Southern folks will say, you so heavenly minded ain't no earthly good. You
Yeah.
have to walk that tightrope of knowing what God said, but also understanding where we are today, because good shepherds know their sheep, right? And they know the field and they smell like the sheep. And we can't help those that we're trying to bring into the herd if we don't even live on the pasture. We just
Mm,
floating somewhere. So
yeah.
for me, understanding the pasture, the terrain of, hey man, our people are being killed and we have our black men in the streets and our black women aren't even being spoken about. And then forget about anybody that's not cisgender or straight. I know in Chicago they were going missing. The
Mm,
LGBT black community, if they were stopped by the cops, you might not ever see them again. And they were not thought of enough to make it to the
mm,
news, or the stories I would hear about them being raped and them being things happening to them. And it's just like thrown
mm,
off, or, you know, that that hurts me and that angers me. And so
mm,
music has been an avenue for me to share the gospel in a way that shows the sin,
mm.
and without us seeing sin for as bad as it is, the celebration isn't as great. And I celebrate really hard. If you see me lead worship, I'm jumping, I'm dancing, I'm literally on the floor at times. I will do like a flip if I could. Like, I'm that person, but I'm there because I understand the state of sin too, and I understand our fallen state, right? And so music helps me to create that bridge and love the gospel, because I can be that voice in the hard times and saying, hey, this is how we feel.
Yeah.
And like David will write sad psalms or angry psalms sometimes. It's all a part of the
Yeah.
process. But so yeah, it's a part of telling a story, and I want our story to live.
Yeah, I think that's well said, perfectly said, in fact. So we always end our show. We're actually out of time, believe it or not. We always end our show with a scripture, and I'm going to read it, and I think it ties well with what we've been talking about. And it comes from Psalm 105, 1 and 2. And it says, "Give praise to the Lord, proclaim his name, make known among the nations what he has done. Sing to him, sing praise to him, tell of his wonderful acts." And I feel like that's really what you're talking about. It's telling that story, letting it be known what God has done and what God can do. And as you said, when you do it through music, it does, as I said earlier in the show, it does have a way to, it's a way to heal
Mhm.
ourselves as individuals from whatever hurt and brokenness we've experienced, but also as a community, as a people, um, that expression of the soul and the proclamation of what God can do and has
Mm,
done is really what gets us through.
yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
So I think that I am looking forward to whatever happens next with you.
I have music I want to release. I just got to focus on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when you get to it after all the other things, I look forward to seeing and hearing it. And I'm so glad that I got to meet you, and I hope that we can stay in touch. We have a lot of mutual friends. I'm surprised
Yes,
our paths haven't crossed before.
right.
But yeah, let's definitely stay in touch.
Please,
And
please. Thank
this
you
has
for
been
having me.
Thank you for being here. I've enjoyed the conversation. I hope all of you did as well. You guys were quiet in the chat. I didn't see very many comments coming across, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. There were a lot of great nuggets that Sharona shared with us today, and we're going to continue the conversation going forward. We have some great artists lined up that we're going to talk to about their own journey and the way that they have used music in their own lives to bless themselves and others. And so I'm excited to have you join us next week and every week. So until then, God bless you, and we'll see you next time.
Hey girl, thanks for watching. Be sure to join us every week in June as we celebrate Black Music Month with gospel recording Joyce Bellamy and Nerva Reddy. We're jamming in June, only on Hey Girl.